Malachim Beit, or 2 Kings, chapter 22. Yoshiyahu was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Yedidah, the daughter of Adiah of Batzkwath. And he did what was right in the eyes of Yehovah, and walked in all the ways of his father David, and did not turn aside right or left. And it came to be, in the 18th year of sovereign Yoshiyahu, that the sovereign sent Shaphan the scribe, son of Atzalyahu, son of Meshullam, to the house of Yehovah, saying, Go up to Hilkiyahu the high priest, and let him weigh the silver which has been brought into the house of Yehovah, which the doorkeepers have gathered from the people. And let them give it into the hand of those doing the work, who are the overseers in the house of Yehovah, and let them give it to those who are in the house of Yehovah doing the work, to strengthen the breach of the house, to carpenters and builders, and to stonemasons, and to buy timber and hewn stone to strengthen the house. However, let not the silver given into their hand be reckoned with them, for they are acting trustworthily. And Hilkiyahu the high priest said to Shaphan the scribe, I found the book of the Torah in the house of Yehovah. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it, and Shaphan the scribe came to the sovereign and brought word to the sovereign again, saying, Your servants have gathered the silver that was found in the house, and have given it into the hand of those who do the work, who oversee the house of Yehovah. And Shaphan the scribe informed the sovereign, saying, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it before the sovereign. And it came to be, when the sovereign heard the words of the book of the Torah, that he tore his garments. And the sovereign commanded Hilkiah the priest, and Ahikam the son of Shaphan, and Achbor the son of Micaiah, and Shaphan the scribe, and Asaiah a servant of the sovereign, saying, Go inquire of Yehovah for me, for the people, and for all Yehudah, concerning the words of the book that's been found, for great is the wrath of Yehovah that is kindled against us, because our fathers have not obeyed the words of this book, to do according to all that's written concerning us. Then Hilkiyahu the priest, and Ahikam, and Achbor, and Shaphan, and Asaiah went to Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shallum, son of Tikvah, son of Harhas, keeper of the wardrobe. Now, she was dwelling in Jerusalem in the second quarter, and they spoke with her. And she said to them, Thus said Yehovah Elohim of Israel, Say to the man who sent you to me, Thus said Yehovah, See, I am bringing evil on this place and on its inhabitants, all the words of the book which the sovereign of Yehudah read, because they've forsaken me and burned incense to other mighty ones to provoke me with all the works of their hands. And so my wrath shall be kindled against this place and not be quenched. And to the sovereign of Yehudah, who sent you to inquire of Yehovah, say this to him. And thus said Yehovah Elohim of Israel, As for the words which you've heard, because your heart was tender, and you humbled yourself before Yehovah when you heard what I spoke against this place and against its inhabitants, that they'd become a ruin and a curse, and have torn your garments and wept before me, I also have heard, declares Yehovah. Therefore, see, I'm gathering you to your fathers, and you shall be gathered to your burial site in peace, so that your eyes do not see all the evil I am bringing on this place. And they brought word to the sovereign. Chapter 23. And the sovereign sent, and they gathered all the elders of Yehuda and Jerusalem to him. And the sovereign went up to the house of Yehovah with all the men of Yehuda and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, and the priests and the prophets and all the people, both small and great. And he read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant which had been found in the house of Yehovah. And the sovereign stood by the column and made a covenant before Yehovah to follow Yehovah and to guard his commands and his witnesses and his laws with all his heart and all his being, to establish the words of the covenant that were written in this book. And all the people stood to the covenant. Then the sovereign commanded Hilkiyahu the high priest, and the priests of the second order, and the doorkeepers, to bring out of the Hakal of Yehovah all the objects that were made for Baal and for Asherah and for the host of the heavens. And he burned them outside of Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron, and took their ashes to Bethel. And he put down the black-robed priests, whom the sovereigns of Yehuda had appointed to burn incense on the high places in the cities of Yehuda and in all the places around Jerusalem, and those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the constellations, and to all the host of the heavens. And he brought out the Asherah from the house of Yehovah to the Wadi Kidron, outside Jerusalem, and burned it at the Wadi Kidron, and ground it to ashes, and threw its ashes on the burial sites of the sons of the people. And he broke down the houses of the male cult prostitutes that were in the house of Yehovah, where the women wove tapestries for the Asherah. And he brought all the priests from the cities of Yehuda, and defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense, from Gabah to Beersheba, and broke down the high places at the gates which were at the entrance of the gate of Yehoshua, the governor of the city, which were to the left of the city gate. However, the priests of the high places did not come up to the slaughter place of Yehovah in Jerusalem, but they ate unleavened bread among their brothers. And he defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, so that no man could make his son or daughter pass through the fire to Molech. And he did away with the horses that the sovereigns of Yehuda had given to the sun at the entrance to the house of Yehovah by the room of Nathan Melech, the eunuch, that were in the court. And he burned the chariots of the sun with fire, and the slaughter places that were on the roof of the upper room of Ahaz, which the sovereigns of Yehuda had made, and the slaughter places which Manasseh had made in the two courtyards of the house of Yehovah. The sovereign broke down and rushed from there and threw their dust into the Wadi Kidron. And the sovereign defiled the high places that were before Jerusalem, which were on the right hand of the mountain of destruction, which Shlomo, sovereign of Israel, built for Ashtoreth, the abomination of the Sidonians, and for Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And he broke in pieces the pillars, and cut down the Asherim, and filled their places with the bones of men, and also the slaughter place that was at Bethel, and the high place which Jeroboam the son of Nebat made, by which he made Israel sin. Both that slaughter place and the high place he broke down, and he burned the high place and ground it to dust, and burned the Asherah. Then Yoshiyahu turned and saw the burial sites that were on the mountain, And he sent and took the bones out of the burial sites and burned them on the slaughter place and defiled it, according to the word of Yehovah, which the man of Elohim proclaimed, who proclaimed these words. And he said, "What tombstone is this that I see?" And the men of the city said to him, "It is the burial site of the man of Elohim who came from Yehuda and proclaimed these matters, which you've done against the slaughter place of Bethel." And he said, "Let him alone, let no one move his bones." So they left his bones alone, with the bones of the prophet who came from Shomeron. And Yoshiyahu also took away all the houses of the high places that were in the cities of Shomeron, which the sovereigns of Israel had made to provoke. And he did to them according to all the deeds he did in Bethel. And he slaughtered all the priests of the high places who were there on the slaughter places and burned men's bones on them and went back to Jerusalem. And the sovereign commanded all the people, saying, "Prepare the Pesach to Yehovah your Elohim, as it is written in this book of the covenant." For such a Pesach had not been prepared since the days of the rulers who ruled Israel, nor in all the days of the sovereigns of Israel and the sovereigns of Yehuda. But in the 18th year of sovereign Yoshiyahu, this Pesach was prepared before Yehovah in Jerusalem. And also Yoshiyahu put away those who consulted mediums and spiritists and the household mighty ones and idols and all the abominations that were seen in the land of Yehuda and in Jerusalem, in order to establish the words of the Torah, which were written in the book that Hilkiyahu the priest found in the house of Yehovah. And before him there was no sovereign like him, who turned back to Yehovah with all his heart and all his being and with all his might, according to all the Torah of Moshe. And after him none rose up like him. However, Yehovah did not turn from the fierceness of his great wrath, with which his wrath burned against Yehuda, because of all the provocations with which Manasseh had provoked him. And Yehovah said, "Even Yehuda I shall remove from my presence, as I have removed Israel, and I shall reject this city Jerusalem, which I've chosen, and the house of which I said my name is there." And the rest of the acts of Yoshiyahu and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the sovereigns of Yehuda? In his days, Pharaoh Necho, sovereign of Mitzrayim, went up against the sovereign of Ashur to the river Euphrates. And sovereign Yoshiyahu went out to him, and he killed him at Megiddo when he saw him. And his servants conveyed his body in a chariot from Megiddo and brought him to Jerusalem and buried him in his own burial place. And the people of the land took Jehoahaz, son of Yoshiyahu, and anointed him and set him up to reign in his father's place. Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 new moons in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Yirmiyahu of Libnah. And he did evil in the eyes of Yehovah, according to all that his fathers did. And Pharaoh Necho imprisoned him at Riblah in the land of Hamath to keep him from reigning in Jerusalem. And he imposed on the land a fine of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. And Pharaoh Necho set up Eliakim, son of Yoshiyahu, to reign in the place of his father Yoshiyahu, and changed his name to Yehoiakim. And Pharaoh took Jehoahaz and went to Mitzrayim, and he died there. And Jehoiakim gave the silver and the gold to Pharaoh, only he taxed the land to give silver according to the mouth of Pharaoh. He exacted the silver and gold from the people of the land, from everyone according to his assessment, to give it to Pharaoh Necho. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Zebedah, the daughter of Pedaiah of Rumah. And he did evil in the eyes of Yehovah according to all that his fathers did. Debir Hayamim Bet, or 2 Chronicles chapter 34. Yoshiyahu was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And he did what was right in the eyes of Yehovah, and walked in the ways of his father David, and did not turn aside right or left. And in the 8th year of his reign, while he was still young, he began to seek the Elohim of his father David. And in the 12th year, he began to cleanse Yehudah and Jerusalem from the high places, and the Asherim, and the carved images, and the molded images. And they broke down the slaughter places of the Baals in his presence, and the sun pillars which were above them he cut down, and the Asherim, and the carved images, and the molded images he smashed, and ground them up, and strewed it on the surface of the burial sites of those who slaughtered to them. And he burned the bones of the priests on their slaughter places, and cleansed Yehudah and Jerusalem. And in the cities of Manasseh, and Ephraim, and Shimon, as far as Naphtali, in the ruins all around. And he broke down the slaughter places and the Asherim, and ground all the carved images into dust, and cut down all the sun pillars throughout all the land of Israel, and returned to Jerusalem. And in the 18th year of his reign, when he had cleansed the land and the house, he sent Shaphan, son of Atzalyahu, and Maasyahu, the head of the city, and Joah, the son of Joahaz, the recorder, to repair the house of Yehovah his Elohim. And they went to Hilkiyahu, the high priest, and they gave the silver that was brought into the house of Elohim, which the Levites who kept the doors had gathered from the hand of Manasseh and Ephraim, and from all the remnant of Israel, and from Yehudah and Benjamin, and which they had brought back to Jerusalem. And they gave it in the hand of the workmen those were appointed over the house of Yehovah. And they gave it to the workmen who worked in the house of Yehovah to repair and strengthen the house. And they gave it to the craftsmen and to the builders to buy hewn stone and timber for couplings and for beams for the houses which the sovereigns of Yehudah had destroyed. And the men did the work trustworthily, and over them were appointed Yahath and Obadiahu, the Levites, of the sons of Merari, and Zechariah and Meshullam, of the sons of the Kehathites, to oversee, and of the Levites, all of whom were skilled in instruments of song, and over the burden bearers, and overseers of all who did work in any kind of service. And of the Levites were scribes and officers and gatekeepers. And when they brought out the silver that was brought into the house of Yehovah, Hilkiyahu the priest found the book of the Torah of Yehovah given by Moshe. Then Hilkiyahu responded and said to Shaphan the scribe, I found the book of the Torah in the house of Yehovah. And Hilkiyahu gave the book to Shaphan, and Shaphan brought the book to the sovereign, and brought the sovereign word, saying, all that's been given into the hand of your servants they're doing, and they've poured out the silver that was found in the house of Yehovah, and they've given it into the hand of those appointed and the workmen. And Shaphan the scribe informed the sovereign, saying, Hilkiyahu the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it before the sovereign. And it came to be, when the sovereign heard the words of the Torah, that he tore his garments. And the sovereign commanded Hilkiyahu, Ahikam, son of Shaphan, and Abdon, son of Micah, and Shaphan the scribe, and Asaiah, a servant of the sovereign, saying, Go inquire of Yehovah for me and for him who is left in Israel and in Yehudah concerning the words of the book that's found. For great is the wrath of Yehovah that's poured out on us, because our fathers have not guarded the word of Yehovah to do according to all that's written in this book. Then Hilkiyahu and those of the sovereign went to Huldah, the prophetess, the wife of Shallum, son of Tokath, son of Hasra, keeper of the wardrobe, who was dwelling in Jerusalem in the second quarter. And they spoke to her about this, and she said to them, Thus said Yehovah Elohim of Israel, Say to the man who sent you to me, Thus said Yehovah, See, I am bringing evil on this place and on its inhabitants, all the curses that are written in this book, which they've read before the sovereign of Yehudah, because they have forsaken me and burned incense to other mighty ones to provoke me with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath is poured out on this place and is not quenched. And to the sovereign of Yehudah, who sent you to inquire of Yehovah, say this to him. Thus said Yehovah Elohim of Israel, whose words you have heard, because your heart was tender, and you humbled yourself before Elohim when you heard his words against this place and against its inhabitants, and you humbled yourself before me, and you tore your garments and wept before me. I also have heard, declared Yehovah. See, I'm gathering you to your fathers, and you shall be gathered to your burial site in peace, so that your eyes would not see all the evil that I'm bringing on this place and on its inhabitants. So they brought back this word to the sovereign, and the sovereign sent and gathered all the elders of Yehudah and Jerusalem. And the sovereign went up to the house of Yehovah with all the men of Yehudah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and the priests and the Levites, and all the people, both great and small. And he read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant which had been found in the house of Yehovah. And the sovereign stood in his place and made a covenant before Yehovah to follow Yehovah and to guard his commands and his witnesses and his laws with all his heart and all his being, to do the words of the covenant that were written in this book. And he made stand all who were present in Jerusalem and Benjamin. And the inhabitants of Jerusalem did according to the covenant of Elohim, the Elohim of their fathers. And Yoshiyahu removed all the abominations from all the lands that belonged to the children of Israel, and made all who were present in Israel diligently serve Yehovah their Elohim. All his days they did not turn from following Yehovah Elohim of their fathers. And chapter 35. And Yoshiyahu performed a Pesach to Yehovah in Jerusalem, and they slew the Pesach on the 14th day of the first new moon. And he sent the priests in their duties, and strengthened them for the service of the house of Yehovah, and said to the Levites who were teaching all Israel, who were set apart to Yehovah, Put the set-apart ark in the house which Shlomo, son of David, sovereign of Israel, built. It's no longer to be a burden on your shoulders. Now, serve Yehovah your Elohim and his people Israel, and prepare by the fathers' houses, according to your divisions, by the writing of David, sovereign of Israel, and by the writing of Shlomo his son. And stand in the set-apart place by the divisions of the fathers' houses of your brothers, the lay people, and the portion of the father's house of the Levites. And slay the Pesach, and set yourselves apart, and prepare for your brothers to do according to the word of Yehovah by the hand of Moshe. And Yoshiyahu gave the lay people lambs and young goats from the flock, all for Pesachim, for everyone present, to the number of 30,000, and 3,000 cattle. These were from the sovereign's possessions. And his leaders contributed a voluntary offering to the people, to the priests, and to the Levites. Hilkiah and Zechariah and Yehiel, the leaders of the house of Elohim, gave to the priests for the Pesachim 2,600 and 300 cattle. And Conaniah, his brothers Shemayahu and Nathanael and Hashabyahu and Yahiel and Yozabad, chiefs of the Levites, gave to the Levites for Pesachim 5,500 cattle. And the service was prepared, and the priests stood in their places, and the Levites in their divisions according to the command of the sovereign. And they slew the Pesach, and the priests sprinkled out of their hands while the Levites were skinning. And they removed the ascending offerings to give them to the divisions of the fathers' houses of the lay people, to bring to Yehovah, as it is written in the book of Moshe, and the same with the cattle. So they roasted the Pesach with fire according to the right ruling, and they boiled the set-apart offering in pots and in cauldrons and in bowls, and brought them speedily to the lay people. And afterward they prepared for themselves and for the priests, because the priests, the sons of Aaron, were offering ascending offerings in fat until night. So the Levites prepared for themselves and for the priests and the sons of Aaron. And the singers, the sons of Asaph, were in their places according to the command of David. And Asaph and Haman and Yeduthun, the seer of the sovereign. And the gatekeepers at each gate did not have to leave their position, because their brothers, the Levites, prepared for them. And all the service of Yehovah was prepared that day to perform the Pesach and to offer ascending offerings on the slaughter place of Yehovah, according to the command of sovereign Yoshiyahu. And the children of Israel who were present performed the Pesach at that time and the festival of Matzah for 7 days. There had not been a Pesach performed in Israel like it since the days of Shemuel the prophet. And none of the sovereigns of Israel had performed such a Pesach as Yoshiyahu performed, with the priests and the Levites and all Yehudah and Israel who were present, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. In the 18th year of the reign of Yoshiyahu, this Pesach was performed. After all this, when Yoshiyahu had prepared the house, Necho, sovereign of Mitzrayim, came up to fight against Karkamish by the Euphrates. And Yoshiyahu went out against him, and he sent messengers to him, saying, "What have I to do with you, sovereign of Yehudah? I'm not coming against you this day, but against the house with which I'm fighting. For Elohim commanded me to make haste. Leave Elohim alone, who is with me, lest he destroy you." However, Yoshiyahu would not turn his face from him, but disguised himself to fight against him, and did not listen to the words of Necho from the mouth of Elohim, and came to fight in the valley of Megiddo. And the archers shot at sovereign Yoshiyahu, and the sovereign said to his servants, "Take me away, for I'm severely wounded." And his servants took him out of that chariot and put him in a second chariot that he had. And they brought him to Jerusalem, and he died, and was buried in one of the burial sites of his fathers. And all Yehudah and Jerusalem were mourning for Yoshiyahu. And Yirmiyahu lamented for Yoshiyahu. And to this day, all the singing men and the singing women speak of Yoshiyahu in their lamentations, and made it a law in Israel. And see, they're written in the laments. And the rest of the acts of Yoshiyahu and his loving commitment according to what was written in the Torah of Yehovah, and his acts from the first to the last. See, they're written in the book of the sovereigns of Israel and Yehuda.